My favorite place to play in after the end is probably Michigan. I love the industrialist religions, the concept of trying to bring back industry without knowing what it is, interpreting ancient manuals to discover secret arcane rituals. It's all very much adeptus mechanicus. The most widespread industrialist faiths are the Galvanists. But there are a bunch of little heresies here and there, including one I'll be playing as today, the Prometheans. Unlike other industrialist faiths, we see the titans of industry as once living god-kings. And the way to bring back industry is for the titans to dominate the earth again. So we will achieve that by becoming a titan ourselves. Sadly, the only Promethean ruler at the start of the game is Chip Van Dyke, a sadistic and greedy coward. Though we are the only Promethean, we are also a bad Promethean, as greedy is a sin in our faith, meaning that we are unlikely to have a lot of piety, and we need piety to become a titan. And to succeed in general, we'll need good stats, a quality we're also lacking. So at the beginning, I took it slow. I decided I was gonna gradually increase my strength until an opportunity presented itself. I chose the wealth-focused lifestyle for the extra 10% income, and started down the avarice tree as it would go well with my greedy trait. I used the extra money to increase my men-at-arms regiments. Chip starts as a duke-level ruler of a 4-county duchy. 2 of those counties are ruled by my vassal and marshal. She's of a different faith, and she absolutely hates me. Promethean is a righteous faith which allows us to revoke land from infidel vassals, and currently we are at 2 out of 4 personal domain, so I would really love to take those 2 counties off her. But she is a good commander. I made her my marshal after all. And she has almost as many soldiers as me. She would definitely fight me, and I'm not sure I'd win. So for now I bide my time. Figuring I'll get rid of her eventually anyway, I changed her vassal contract to give me more money in exchange for a guaranteed council position. Our faith has lay clergy, so until I can get those counties, I stripped a couple of my baron-level vassals of their temple holdings. But as I knew I would eventually have to fight the countess, and castles in this part of the world are relatively strong, I used the extra income to hire some siege men-at-arms. Just a few years after the start of the game, I already had 2 factions organizing against me. The first was a faction of 1, consisting of just the countess. She was just barely too weak to press her demands thanks to my military build-up. The other faction were angry peasants. It turns out that just my capital county followed the Promethean faith. Everyone else were lakeshore infidels. Pretty quickly they rose up. The game automatically put Chip to be the commander of my army, but as he was so terrible, the game predicted I was probably gonna lose the battle, despite having more and better quality troops. The other potential commanders in my court weren't great either, but we pulled through in the end. I put my counselors to re-establishing control over the rebellious county and spreading the Promethean faith. As you saw, there aren't many impressive characters at my court, and those that are hate me. So I took every opportunity to get new, competent people. I had already accepted an Americanist to be my spymaster. I picked up a competent peasant to be my steward, and this old order guy offered to join my court. He would make a good marshal and commander. That's when I was reminded that I had granted my previous marshal a guaranteed council position. Oh well, at least the old order guy will still make a good commander. After a decade and a half of build-up, I was finally confident I could take my vassal down in a one-on-one fight. She probably thought the same, which is why she got an alliance with some guy across the lake. Together, they were more powerful than me. But I wanted to go to war, so I invaded a neighboring one-county realm. Our commanders were generally so terrible that despite our numerical superiority, our chances of winning were so-so. Luckily, the old order guy was there to save the day. At this point I realized that the king of Illinois is a conqueror. He had spread all the way to Ohio and is bordering me. I didn't want to swear fealty to some conclavian Catholic who would probably force me to abandon Prometheanism and my dreams of becoming a titan of industry. So for now I opted for the tactic of hoping he doesn't attack me. To the north of me is a lakeshore one-county republic. Usually they ally their fellow lakeshore worshippers and rely on them for protection. But right now they're vulnerable, so I go in on them. And of course I had to rely on the old order outsider to lead my armies to victory. That's when my vassal's alliance was dissolved, and I could finally take control of my entire capital duchy. Due to her high command skill, she was able to put up a fight. The first battle went our way, but it came at a cost. The old order guy was slain in battle, and we could no longer rely on him. And the next time we attacked the rebels with more than twice the troops they had, they kicked our ass. Worse still, the rebel countess formed another alliance and called them in. But they weren't nearly as strong as her old friends. And I was able to intercept them before they grouped up with her. I was too afraid to attack her head-on again, so I tried swapping territory with her, as I now had twice the counties she did. And that's when the peasants decided to rebel again. I didn't react at first, hoping that the peasants and the countess would fight each other. In the meantime, I had to extort whatever subjects I had left to get out of debt. My enemies didn't end up fighting each other, but I got lucky anyway. When I sieged down the rebel countess's capital, I captured her heir. That, in combination with the battle I already won, gave me enough war score to end the war. She was so upset with me for taking her land that she became my rival. Since she was still in my dungeons, that wasn't a smart move. With the countess gone, the peasants were easy to put down. I finally control my entire capital duchy, my vassals don't despise me, and my court isn't filled entirely by useless characters. Now threats to us come only from outside our realm, like Illinois, which is scarier than ever. Although they are fighting a civil war, they might lose. If they do lose, the conqueror will be deposed and Illinois will be neutered. I wanted to ally the rebels so I could help them win, but apparently us savage Prometheans aren't fit to marry their family. So the rebellion was eventually defeated, and as a cherry on top, to our north the King of Superior is also a conqueror, leaving us sandwiched between two realms we cannot hope to beat in a straight war. Well, this is a perfect opportunity to go on a peaceful pilgrimage. I will need piety to eventually become a titan of industry anyway. And my first event on the pilgrimage was one I had never seen before. A beggar absolutely fleeces me, asking me for more and more money. Every time I give him some gold, my pilgrimage becomes more pious. And after the third time, I got the option to give him even more money, and I'd lose the greedy trait and gain generous. Exchanging a sinful trait for a virtuous one was a good idea, so all in all, this was a great deal for me. When I got to the holy site of Detroit, I got the event where one of my entourage begs me to become a nun. And if I accept, I get piety. This can be a tough choice, cause if the character wanting to become a nun or monk is a useful courtier, it can be a tough thing to let them go. But you get this event even if you set out with a tiny entourage and the game has to generate random wanderers who want to become a nun. So here I was getting piety because someone I don't even know wanted to devote the rest of their life to the faith. It was a very successful pilgrimage, mostly because of that lying beggar at the start. Up north was the last lakeshore realm in Michigan, and I saw an opportunity to take them on. The war wasn't smooth, but I won in the end. I had expected I would have to put down a lakeshore peasant uprising, but instead I just had to put down a generic peasant uprising in my capital. This is when I got my first dynasty legacy. The Prometheans are a warlike faith, and I will definitely be waging a lot of wars. I had already started educating my children to be martial characters. My plan is for my heir to get a bunch of martial lifestyle perks and lead his own armies. So with that all in mind, I started going down the martial dynasty legacy path. Saginaw will be the first industrialist realm we conquer. They are Galvanists and we are hostile to each other, so we can still use the Holy War CB. I had delayed attacking them because they had 3 alliances, but on closer inspection all their alliances were to weak rulers, so I went in on them anyway. I broke their and their allies' armies one by one. I sieged down their capital without issue and added another duchy to my realm. I now had enough land to create the Kingdom of Michigan, but there was no rush. As I'm the only Promethean ruler, I won't be able to peacefully vassalize anyone. And Chip still had some life left in him, so I wasn't worried about succession splitting my realm. The Grand Republic of Detroit, ruled by Ayatollah Walter, was the last serious rival I had in Michigan itself. They had a decent army, but were currently busy putting down a couple of rebellions, and they had no allies. When I invaded them, one of their counties was already sieged down by peasants. I split my army in 2. The half with the siege engines would capture Detroit itself, while the other half would siege down the county that was captured by peasants. Both counties were taken at about the same time, as the peasants didn't have time to recover the garrison. Ayatollah Walter didn't dare meet me on the battlefield, so I won the war without fighting a single battle. Detroit is much more developed and built up than West Michigan, and I wanted to make it my new capital. Although, with the current state of it, I decided to wait for the control to increase a bit before I actually made a move. In the meantime, I took a look at my surroundings, and I did not like it. Illinois and Superior are still ruled by conquerors, and they're stronger than ever. And farther north, the kingdom of Givedin is also ruled by a conqueror. I checked to see if maybe there was some bug and maybe the conqueror trait was easy to get, but no. Out of the 4 conquerors on the map, currently 3 are right next to me. All I can do is hope they all fight each other and leave me alone. Having conquered Detroit, one of the Promethean holy sites, it was time. I recreated the Head of Faith for the Prometheans, making myself the Titan Emperor of the All Americas. Despite the name, it's a kingdom-level title. Still, as a king I could hold court, have duke-level vassals if I wanted to, and I could elevate my best son to be my co-monarch and player heir. A few years later, when my truce with Detroit ran out, I attacked and destroyed them once and for all. Then I noticed that Illinois had had a succession, and Chicagoland broke away. It was ruled by the brother of the new king of Illinois, who was the one who inherited the conqueror trait. And they weren't allies. I knew they could negotiate an alliance at any time, but the prospect of getting all of Chicagoland in one war was too tempting. The war went well enough at first, but then, what I had feared was going to happen, happened. The king of Chicagoland called in his brother, now ally, the conqueror king of Illinois. Together, they drove me off quickly, and I had to focus on putting down another peasant uprising. But the attack on Chicagoland wasn't a total mistake. Now that they're allied, they won't reunify into a single realm again. At least, that's what I tell myself. Finally, as the leader of all Prometheans, it's fitting that Chip would go on a pilgrimage. But not just any pilgrimage, a unique type of pilgrimage only we have access to. A salvage expedition. While digging in Toronto, I found shaded spectacles. A famed headgear item that, apparently, makes me look mysteriously seductive. I was ready to move on to my next character, so when a plague hit Michigan, I didn't have Chip treated, and I let his son Hendrik succeed him. Hendrik was a decent martial character, although a bit of a lunatic. The first thing I did as him was conquer the little realms I purposefully left independent within Michigan. That way, Hendrik got a bit of a prestige boost at the start of his reign. As far as our surroundings are concerned, Illinois is still ruled by a conqueror, and Chicago is still independent. The Kingdom of Superior is now the Empire of the Northwoods, but because of a bunch of faction wars, its ruler is no longer a conqueror. I spent my time mostly just entrenching my rule. I gathered enough gold and piety to form a holy order which will be useful in the wars to come. I became brave and I finished the strategist tree. That's when I saw an opportunity. Illinois was struggling with a war to their south, and for some reason they didn't call Chicagoland in. I assumed they would eventually win anyway, but maybe not if I got involved, so I declared war for a duchy. At first I was able to win a few battles thanks to the Holy Order. They still didn't call Chicagoland in, and they couldn't seem to group all of their armies together, allowing me to defeat them piecemeal. Until eventually they did group up. But by baiting them into my lands, I weakened them over time while I was recovering my strength. Allowing me to push them back and take a county. Then they finally called Chicagoland in to help them. But by getting them to attack me across the river, I was able to shatter their armies and win the war. I like to think that this was the beginning of the downfall of Illinois. I originally wanted to attack Chicagoland right after, but I was weakened, broke, and unsure of victory. So I spent a few years recovering and eyeing both Chicagoland and Illinois, but they had recovered their strength too. I was so focused on them I had almost missed the Great Reserve, an entire kingdom ripe for conquest. As Hendrik I attacked, certain of an easy war, but then Hendrik died of heart failure at 54, and his son Alfred took over. He's a brilliant strategist and very young, a great character for the long-term expansion of the All-Americas. But in the short term I had some fires to put out. An independence faction pressed its demand right after succession, and I was still at war with the Greater Reserve. Individually, either of these wars wouldn't be a problem, but the fact that I had to ping-pong between them meant the whole ordeal was much harder than it needed to be. Eventually, that got sorted out, and I was in charge of a powerful kingdom and a competent Titan Emperor. At this point, Illinois was huge. It held lands from Texas to Ohio, and it could marshal an army 10,000 strong, not counting its allies. But it was still just a kingdom, and their king was old. When he dies, it was liable to fracture into half a dozen different realms. I was looking forward to it. What I wasn't looking forward to, though, were the consumerists who had started to make noise in Chicago. If you don't know, the consumerist faith appears in Chicago at around 2750 and conquers a whole bunch of land under an extremely competent prophet ruler. And you don't want to be near when that happens. But it was too late. The consumerists showed up on the map by taking Chicago, and they declared war on the rest of Chicagoland to take the duchy around it. I wanted to nip this problem in the bud, so I attacked the consumerists, hoping to take all their land and make their prophet a wanderer, and therefore much less dangerous. You see, the consumerist prophet has insane martial stats, and the guy has literally found the infinite money glitch, meaning he could hire all mercenary companies at once if he needed to. He is a very dangerous person to have on your border. I managed to defeat him at first, but he just hired more mercenaries and came back. And you'd think that hiring so many companies would bankrupt him. No, he has more money than ever before. Well, I was unable to deal with this before it became a problem. All I can do is hope I'll be able to solve it later. On the bright side, Illinois has collapsed. Their king died of old age and passed down the conqueror trait to his son, who then quickly died of tuberculosis. And he did not pass the trait on to his brother. The remnants of Illinois are called the Ozarks Kingdom, and they'll never be a threat again. I was looking to form a new empire at this point because I wanted to keep the All-America's name and flag, and for that I needed more land. I took Alejania without much trouble. And I even took a county off of Ozarks because it was the jure part of the Greater Reserve. Ontario held one of our holy sites and was a mostly unified kingdom, making it a perfect target for an invasion CB. They had an alliance with a kingdom on the East Coast, and together they were more powerful than me. But my cousin somehow ended up being married to the governor of Gotham, so I had an East Coast ally of my own, who was willing to help me. We made short work of the Ontarians and their ally. About half of the kingdom ended up directly in my hands, and I was able to give all those titles to loyal vassals. But the other half remained under the rule of Ontarians. It was only a matter of time before they rebelled, so I carefully revoked their titles one by one until they did. The rebellion wouldn't have been much of a problem, but the consumerists chose to attack me at the same time, trying to grab a duchy off me. I chose to ignore the consumerists until I had dealt with the rebellion, so by the time I got there, they had already occupied a couple of my counties. But even though they could hire all the mercenaries they want, they seem to only hire as many as they think they need. So by attacking them while they were spread out, I was able to pull out a victory. This caused them to scatter, and the army that was led by the prophet Hand of the Free Market himself ended up going deeper into my territory. I wanted to hunt him down so I can hopefully kill him on the battlefield, but this mother lover is fast. Eventually, I did manage to corner him in northern Michigan, and I won the battle. But he got away again. When I returned to the front line, the consumerist mercenaries grouped up. Under the leadership of their prophet, they were about to break my army. Luckily, he accepted white peace before that happened. My character got the nickname The Lion, and boy did he earn it. My realm was now stable, and I could focus on raising the money to form a new empire. And I've done it. I'm now actually an emperor. And not just a Titan emperor. I had united Ontario, Alechania, Greater Reserve and Michigan into one empire that encompasses most of the Promethean holy sites. But two of our holy sites are still controlled by the consumerists, and we had never actually won a war against them. It's fitting that my final act be the expulsion of the consumerists from Chicago. The war started out well. I waited for them to come to me before I raised my army. I caught them off guard and I won a few battles and occupied a county. But they regrouped and fought me back to my lands. I passed absolute crown authority to get as many bodies as possible for the war. I again pushed them all the way to Chicago itself, but they just kept coming, and the prophet was richer than ever. Maybe if I had saved up enough money to hire every single mercenary company before the war, that would have annulled his infinite money advantage, but it's too late for those ideas now. Despite having participated in over a dozen battles in this war alone, Alfred the Lion died in his sleep at 57. He was the backbone of my armies, my only commander capable of rivaling the consumerist prophet. With him gone, the war was lost. His successor, Alfred II, was still in control of the All-Americas Empire. And we know that the consumerists have tried and failed to defeat us in an aggressive war before. So I could wait for Hand of the Free Market to die of old age. Without their super commander, even their mercenaries can't overwhelm us. But it seems fitting to end it here. Two titans of the Great Lakes, neither one being able to destroy the other. So thank you very much for watching. My name's Michael, and I hope to see you again next time.